Hi and welcome to lesson 10 of drafting pleadings and appearances. In lesson 10, which is on art of writing opinions, we will deal with types of legal opinions. We will deal with the elements which have to be there in any opinion writing, and then we will have a fair discussion on written writ petitions and special leave petitions. Without any delay, let's go further. Types of legal opinions. So before I deal or rather discuss with on the types of legal opinions, let me brief you what a legal opinion is. In your profession as a company secretary, imagine that let us say a company, it's a startup which started raising funds. Okay, it is doing really good, and let me take the example. Let us say Ola, right? It is doing pretty good, and it's getting good amount of revenues. It has good future, so it thinks, okay, I just want to go listing, right? So then it approaches you as a company secretary and asks, Mr. Company Secretary or Miss Company Secretary, and this is what is my plan, this is my company, this is my business, I'm willing to go for a IPO. So from the compliance perspective, what are the things I should do, what are the things I should change, right? Suppose it is a private limited company, right? So then you will firstly look at, okay, give me your documents, right? So you will take all the documents into picture, correct? There are a lot of documents. You will have all the statutory documents, MOAs, AOAs, all the investment agreements, shareholder agreements, and all the forms which they would have filed. And then accordingly, you will give your opinion as to, see, this is a private company, it has to be converted into a public company. These are the things which we need to maintain. Minimum shareholding is something which is important. And then when you go for IPO, see, this much of time period, you should have these basic criteria you have to fulfill. Only then you will be eligible to go for an IPO, right? Then accordingly, you will start posing more questions as to, okay, now what is the shareholding pattern, what are the who are the promoters of the company, right? Accordingly, by listening to all the data and also by taking all the information and documents from them, then you will start making a proper report, right? So that is what is called as a opinion writing. So they are asking you to give your opinion as to what kind of compliances I have to make, right? So this is a very simple example I'm giving. There will be much more cases. For example, let us say Walmart has decided to invest in Flipkart. Now, for this investment, so decision is very simple. They would invest, they have money, they're investing. But it's not like that, right? So they will take opinions. So what kind of opinions? From a professional, they will take an opinion whether it is a feasible option to invest in Flipkart. So that fellow will give an investment as to from a business point of view. Secondly, from a legal point of view, which is applicable for us, the professionals like us, they will ask, so I'm investing money, what is the possible routes through which I can invest? Right? So these are called as advisors on transactions. This is a decided transaction and you're asking for the advisors as to how should I infuse funds. Can it be through the direct parent company? Should I incorporate a subsidiary in India? Or what? How should the funds flow? What are the RBI compliances? What are the FEMA restrictions? Right? So these all the things keeping in mind, a professional will give an opinion. Another example for you, suppose let us say SEBI SAST regulations, right? Many usually company secretaries do not touch this field much, but SaaS is like a very unique field where the interpretation is quite tougher. So now in SaaS, suppose a promoter is willing to infuse more funds into the company, but he wants to make sure it doesn't touch the minimum open offer trigger provided under the SaaS. So he will ask your opinion, like, this is the proposed transaction, will that be triggering it? So then you will particularly ask, okay, what is your question? Give me the question. Then you're answering that question. So this is one kind of a legal opinion. So opinions are particularly the legal opinions for that matter are the ones which will be given by the legal professionals, which includes the company secretaries as well, wherein we opine on transactions, we give our input, we give our opinion. So legal opinions is nothing but the opinion of that professional. So is there a format for it? The answer is no. I strictly say it's no. Every individual has got their own format and they have to follow it. You will have your own format in the sense that, see, it's up to you how you wish to communicate your opinion to the other person and how you rely on that opinion, right? How did you come to that conclusion? You can give a simple one-line answer, this is my opinion, but no, opinion writing has some kind of a expectation from the client. He pays you some 50,000 bucks only purely for the purpose of a 3 to 4 page document you make for him. Like it makes a lot of sense because you're particularly studying all the provisions for him and giving him your opinion, right? So that is what is the power of an opinion. It is very powerful in terms of earning you some revenue. At the same time, it is very powerful for the client also. Instead of he or she spending a lot of time on knowing the things on their own, they will rely on a professional who is a expert in that field. Right? So that's why we have RBI experts, right? Professional experts who know things, right? So it's all because they can, out of their experiences and out of various case laws they would have studied, they will be in a better position to give opinions. Now let us see what are the uh, opinions, in the sense that let us see what are the kinds of opinions we have. First is advices on transactions. As I've given you the example, so where a company has decided, the Walmart has decided to invest it into Flipkart, that is a transaction. Now they're asking you the advice on it. So how better can we do it? So that is an advice on transaction. Advices on law, right? SAST, I've given you an example on SAST, whether it would be applicable or not. IPOs, right? So how best can we do? So these are all advices on laws. Then opinion on facts. So you will give me the facts. That is the question. So the question, in fact, in the case of SAST example is, see, this is the fact. So 1, 2, 3 steps we have already undertaken. This is what had happened. Now we need your opinion as to, will this attract any penalty? Will this, can this be compoundable? So these are all opinion on facts which have already been done, right? And then advices on evidence. So advice on evidence is that, so for a particular case, you have got certain documentary evidence or something. So now you go to this person and ask, okay, is this evidence adequate enough for the for my defense, or for substantiating my allegation? So that is what is an advices on evidence. So these are types of opinion writings. Elements of opinion writing. So I am not covering the 100% of the opinion writing syllabus in your CS, for the simple reason that opinion writings are and should come from the student. Student should think from the shoes of a professional, because you are in CS professional now. You are no more in CS foundation or executive. You are way closer to the profession. So you should start thinking as a professional and think, okay, if at all a question is asked to me on an issue, how do I form my opinion given that all the sources are there with me? It's not an examination where you write your answer. In fact, examination, the answers you're writing are also opinion writings. But over there, you are not sure of anything. Because, I mean, you might be sure, but at the same time, there is a limitation of resources you can refer to. But whereas here, there is unlimited resources. So in a situation where you have unlimited resources to refer to, and you're supposed to give a documentary opinion, then how do you do it? So that is what is an opinion writing, right? So rest of it, you read the entire lesson as a good reading and try to develop the understanding. You need not remember anything. Any question on opinion writing in the exam should be self, in the sense that it has to be as original as possible, right? But this elements of opinion writing are something which should not miss in your opinion writings, right? So I'll quickly take you through it. So firstly, introductory matters, that is title, date and addressee, in the sense that, so whom are you addressing this opinion to? What is the date and what title you want to give the document? It's always good to give some catchy titles that gives a very good like importance to your document. Then introduction. So introduction is particularly where you will try to give the situation in hand, right? As to what is this opinion for, why did they come and approach you for the opinion, and all that stuff will come under introduction, right? Where you can also give your stand, like initial observation that so and so is the transaction. You explain the transaction, correct? So in the introduction, you can explain like what happened, why did they have to come to you, what was the major dispute for which this opinion has been sought, or what was that question of law, or what was the legal aspect on which the opinion has been sought. If anything of that nature, you can introduce the issue. Then you will go for definitions. So definition is a very standard thing, like I need not explain to that, like what are the terms you've used in the opinion, you can define it there. Then understanding the facts. So you are trying, so since it's an opinion, you should try to give, okay, so I understand that, like what did you understand about the facts? So give all those facts which you understand as such, right? And then, because all your analysis is depending upon those facts, then basic research on case laws, you can do wide research of case laws, right? So before that, so this research on case laws is also for the purpose of relying on it, right? And usually during preparation of opinion writing, you rely on various resources. So even while understanding the facts, it's very important that you rely on statutory documents. At times you rely on other opinions. For case laws, for that matter, you rely on the Supreme Court orders, High Court interpretation, legislative documents like parliamentary debates, or bills, notes on clauses, there are various things you rely on. All of that has to be reproduced in order for the document to be as authentic as possible and as updated as possible. So based on all this, now you would have formed an opinion. So that is what is an expression of opinion. So you have to express your opinion. A legal opinion is something where we expect the professional to give the opinion as to, see, this is what you have to do. This is what I opine in this transaction which has to be done, right? So that is what is called as a opinion, expression of opinion. You have to express your opinion at the end of the document, which is quite important, and it is inevitable for a professional in an opinion writing to give the entire facts, details, and all other aspects except for the opinion, which would not be valid, right? So that is what is expression of opinion. Then in expression of opinion, usually you would say it will be in singular, saying that I, in this situation, opine that this transaction is lawful and it can be done without any hassle, or I opine that it would attract certain penalty of around so and so because it is in contravention of so and so provisions, or based on the interpretation under clause so and so, it is very clear that this transaction cannot be entered into, and hence you have to restrain from entering into such transaction. You can be as open as possible in opinion writings, right? Next, and at times, in few cases, people are like, you have to mandatorily obtain opinions. Like in few, there are regulatory requirements to obtain opinions. So in such cases, you will be forced by the client to give a favorable opinion. But as a professional, make sure you are as unbiased as possible when you're giving legal opinions. Then you talk about the qualifications. So what are these qualifications? So even though you have given an opinion, there is a situation where you are not, like, you have given that opinion based on various facts and various factors. So only subject to that, this opinion will stand good. So give those qualifications, saying that, see, even though I said in this nature, but there is a chance that this might happen, in which my opinion might go totally and utterly wrong. Then special matters. So special matters are like, you have to give a special mention, as in when, suppose you have taken opinion from a local council of any other country. Suppose you are supposed to give an opinion where the facts or the factors or the law is involved of any other country, and for that you have to depend on the opinion given by the local council of that country. In such a case, you have to give a mention of it in your paper. So like that, special matters have to be specifically mentioned. Then you have to sign it, and there are certain disclaimers you give, like saying that this is as on so and so. So the opinion might change even the next day. So as and when the Companies Act 13 has come, there have been multiple amendments to Companies Act and the rules and the regulations as like quite frequently. Hence, all the opinions given and even the articles given written on the websites, they used to have a disclaimer saying that with the dynamic amendments coming through the Companies Act and the rules thereunder, the opinion or the opinion of the author is subject to change as and when an amendment might come. So similarly, even in a legal opinion, the person giving the opinion would give a disclaimer saying that this is out of the knowledge of the person who is writing it, and he cannot be made liable for any of the acts acted upon by the client, or it is up to the discretion of the client whether to act upon the opinion or not. So the counsel cannot be laid, or the person who is making the opinion cannot be made liable for that, right? Then you might ask me the question, so can he not be made liable at all? The answer is no. Where an opinion misleads the client, and it is apparent on the face of the opinion that a professional of that nature shouldn't have given such an opinion, in such cases that person will definitely be held liable. Secondly, it is affecting your ethical nature of business, and because it's up to your ethics. If you give such kind of opinions, definitely you will not get your clients anymore. So that is one nature, right? So these are the various elements of opinion writing, and this is our discussion on opinion writing, right? Now, let us discuss the writs. So even under writs, these have been widely covered in your legal knowledge, which you have procured in executive, and also, to my knowledge, I think even in foundation, we have something on writs, right? So I will not go deep into this concept. I will just give you a wide understanding of what each of the writs are. So the writs are of 5 types, and the first and the foremost writ is a habeas corpus. And always remember, writ jurisdiction is exercised either by the High Court or by the Supreme Court. Not all courts will have the jurisdiction to exercise writs, only High Court or Supreme Court. So what is habeas corpus? Corpus means body. So habeas corpus means a writ by which the court, in the sense that writs are issued by these courts. We only file writ petitions praying the court to issue such writ. So this writ is a direction particularly, right? So the High Court or Supreme Court will issue a direction to the police to produce a body within 24 hours. So usually police will have a responsibility. If you have seen in many movies, whenever you arrest someone, you have to produce that person before the court within the next 24 hours. So before the magistrate. So where a person is gone missing, in such a case, you can file a writ of habeas corpus, whereby the police will be directed by the court to produce that person within 24 hours before the court. So that is what is called as habeas corpus. Remember it by the word corpus. Corpus means body. Then we have mandamus. So what is mandamus? Remember by the word mandum, which is mandate. So mandamus is mandating an authority either to do something something which he is supposed to do, or to not do, or not to do something which he is not supposed to do. So as an authority, for example, let us say municipal commissioner, right? So they are supposed to give permissions to constructions, right? Suppose a building has got all required things, like they have got a good plan, architect, everything was in place, they have applied, and the commissioner is not giving the permission, and there were no remarks also being made. So in such a case, you can go to the High Court and plead the High Court saying that the commissioner is not doing what he's supposed to do. What he's supposed to do, he's supposed to give permissions, he's not giving it. Right? Or second, suppose the commissioner is not letting you work. He is coming and giving you like show cause notice saying that, see, this permission is hereby kept in abeyance. You cannot go on with the construction because some complaint has been received by us. Right? So now also you can go to the High Court filing a writ of mandamus, wherein you will plead the High Court to issue an order to the GHMC to not to do such kind of an action, to restrain from passing an abeyance order and take back the order. So this also can be done by way of a mandamus. So mandamus is basically to mandate an authority. Prohibition and certiorari, these two have to be read together. So why read together? So prohibition is something which has happened before, certiorari is something which has happened after. So what is this something? This is passing of order by a subordinate court. So where a subordinate court has passed an order wherein it did not have that jurisdiction to pass such order, or it has passed that order with excessive jurisdiction. So where first it has usurped a jurisdiction which is not there, or it has exercised jurisdiction in excess of its existing jurisdiction, in both the cases this will apply. But when does prohibition come? As the word suggests, prohibit. So I can prohibit you from doing something before you did it. Suppose you are prohibited to smoke in public area, then it means even before you smoke, it means prohibited. The moment you smoke, later it is not prohibition. You get my point? Like, it means that even before an order is passed, then I can go before a High Court through a writ of prohibition and plead the High Court to issue directions to the subordinate court to prohibit it from entertaining the case further. So that is before the order is passed. Let us say the order has already been passed. In such a case, since an order has been passed, now you go with a certiorari. If an order is passed, what do you want to do? I want that to be quashed. I want it to be set aside. The subordinate court order should be set aside because that order has been passed by exercising a jurisdiction which is not vested in the court, or it is a jurisdiction which is in excess of its existing jurisdiction. So that is how two grounds on which you go even for certiorari. So if you see, the grounds for certiorari and prohibition are one and the same, but you go for prohibition on a subordinate court before an order has been passed, because only then you can prohibit the subordinate court from taking up the case. Whereas since it has taken up the case, order has already been passed, then you will file writ of certiorari for quashing of the case or setting aside of the order. Right? I hope this makes sense. So passing of the order later, after the passing of order, you can ask for setting aside of the order through certiorari. Before order has been passed, you can ask for the lower court to be prohibited from going on with the case. So this is what are the prohibition and certiorari. And finally, quo warranto. Quo warranto means under what authority? Right, so quo warranto is under what authority? So it is trying to ask a person who has occupied a position of an officer, but he is not actually eligible to be so. Suppose a very standard example is, let us say, in a government office, it's usually for government offices. So promotion criteria is you need at least 5 years of experience in order for you to be a assistant manager. Let us say assistant manager, right? But using your influence, using your political, whatever it is, by 4 year, 11 months only, or I mean, let me not make it too heavy, but let us say after 3 years, you were able to go to the position of an assistant manager, right? So in fact, in line are various other professionals, right? Various other people who have already have 5 years of experience. So they were set aside and you have been given the position to occupy that assistant manager post. Right, so aggrieved are certain parties, correct? And this is a state item because it is a government office. There are certain protocols. So when you go for a quo warranto, then the High Court or the Supreme Court will question this person, asking under what authority did you occupy that position as an officer, because you do not have that kind of an experience. Show us the proof that you can and you are eligible to be the assistant manager in this case. So that is called as quo warranto. Under what authority can you hold that position as an officer, right? A quick summary: habeas corpus is corpus being body. So produce the body within 24 hours. Mandamus is mandating the authority to do something which it is supposed to do or not to do something which it is not supposed to do. Prohibition and certiorari are two related aspects. So when a subordinate court has taken up a case with jurisdiction which is not in it, in a sense that it has usurped jurisdiction which it is not vested with, or it has excessive jurisdiction, in such a case you can go and plead the Supreme Court or the High Court saying that the subordinate court is exercising excessive jurisdiction, so kindly prohibit it from doing so. So it is before even the subordinate court did something on it, it is prohibited from doing so. Suppose a subordinate court had already passed an order, which means there is no point of prohibiting it. You cannot prohibit because it has already been done. So in such a case, you will go for certiorari, wherein you plead the court saying that it has obtained jurisdiction in excessive, or it has not obtained the jurisdiction which is supposed to have. So in hence, kindly set aside the order or quash the order. So that is certiorari. And quo warranto is when you're asking the authority of a person occupying the position of an officer in the government, where you will ask him under what authority do you hold this position, prove it to me. So these are the 5 famous writs, and you need to know all these 5, and I hope this explanation gives you a better understanding about the concept of writs. So coming to special leave petition, right, see, special leave petition, I have covered it in lesson number 9 on pleadings. So kindly refer to that video where you'll have a good understanding of special leave petitions. So with this, we finish this video on opinion writing. So thanks for watching the video. If you wish to learn more on how to draft, or you want to practice various exercises to sharpen your drafting skills for your examination and also for your practice as a trainee or as a committee secretary, please fill in the information in the form which is provided in the description below. We are coming out with a course very soon. Thank you. Stay tuned to Virtual Law, and this is Prakul signing off from VL Academy.